turning back.
Cheers. Thank you for being you.
Yeah, thank you for being you. And welcome to the Lost Boy Scouts podcast.
We're your hosts. I'm Danny.
I'm Tyler.
Nice.
Yeah, we're just going to get right into it.
Right into it. We're going to taste some more Buffalo Trace because we both like it.
It's Friday night.
It is Friday night.
It's rainy. Fucking winter will not go away here in Utah.
It's crazy how much it's there. It just won't go away.
Right?
We can't get rid of it.
I've been like betting my kids which berm is going to melt first. And surprisingly, where we had everything like moved off, I had everything professionally moved off. It's actually gone.
Wow.
I mean, we're flooding.
Oh my gosh. It's going to flood.
Build your ark.
Here we go.
Build your ark.
Yeah, when I was telling Tyler, whenever we drove down to Provo today, and it was insane to me to see the avalanche coming down towards the road, and you could see the little path that it took. It's insane how much snow was there still.
Right.
And right off the side of the road, there's still like a 10-foot drift from where the avalanche went across the road.
That's insane.
Insane.
There's so much snow.
So much snow, and it won't stop. And it's raining now, like Tyler said, and it's just ugly.
Yeah.
We hate it.
I mean, I probably could survive if we had a little bit of bluebird sky here and there.
Yeah.
Like Sunday was so nice, but like you get back in that gray, that sad gray, and you're just like, you get depressed.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm over it.
Yeah. Gonna hit that red light therapy or,
Yeah.
you know,
Something to give us. Yeah. Head to Mexico.
Head to Mexico.
Yeah. That's our plan. Our plan is to have us a little hacienda that we can all share down in Mexico.
Yes.
That's the goal.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the goal.
Yeah. Start growing some agave and brew tequila.
One day have your own tequila brand.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Artisan. I don't know if they'll let a because like the tequila, like whiskey is it's very like craft, right? Like there's a lot of craft that goes into it.
Sure.
So if you've ever done like tours, I know they had like the first female, it's like, I'm going to butcher it, but like whatever the maker is, right?
Right.
The first one, the Casa de Grones, she was like the first female one. So I'm wondering if they'd let somebody out of the country, even if I lived there, become one of those.
I wonder if it's like an apprenticeship that you...
I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it's like one of those things where you go and you learn from somebody, but it's like an apprenticeship. And what if you had some money and you're like, hey, I'm going to pay you to teach me. And then they're like, yes, come on, gringo.
Sure. Bring your sunscreen, gringo.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're on episode 4, part 2 of our Jiu Jitsu journey.
Yeah.
We're not sure how many episodes we're going to do. Probably another couple. At least one more, because we're going to try to have a guest on that we'd like to talk to.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many parallels to your life, man.
So much.
Like you have to do a deep dive. And so when people are telling you, well, learn jujitsu, you listen to those guys. Yeah. This is it. This is at least why we're doing it.
Right. This is the follow up to Lost and Reinvention, and how we both feel that our lives were reinvented when we were lost. Yeah. And jiu-jitsu was a big part of that. So that's kind of why we want to go into that.
For sure.
Yeah. And so we like to start off with a story. We usually read a book. We have a couple books that we were looking at. We had last week we had the Gracie
the Bible.
Book, the Bible.
It's known as the Bible, I think.
Every time a professor sees somebody reading, he's like,
"Got the Bible."
You're looking at the Bible. Which is good. Yeah. We have Jiu-Jitsu University, which is by Salo Ribeiro, which is an amazing black belt. Yeah. I've seen a bunch of his stuff. I watched a bunch of his matches, and I really like his game. I
bought this book for Christmas for myself because what I thought was interesting is he breaks down every belt.
Okay.
And one of the things that I noticed is for the white belt, he said it's all about survival. Your mission is survival.
Wow.
And that's right. Like that's what we were talking about, right? Like you're learning to protect yourself.
Yeah.
What is survival but protecting yourself, right? And he's like, I want to expose the white belt to every type of, jiu-jitsu. There's nothing that's really off limits for the white belt. Mostly because he wants exposure, right? He knows that you're never going to, you're not going to learn, or it was about exposure.
Right.
He then goes into, the blue belt, and he says the blue belt next to the black belt is the belt you're likely to have the longest in his academies.
Right. And I've heard that before. And I know in our academies, especially, like, blue belt is the belt that you learn so much that you think you know, and then you're like, man, I don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, but it's such a long belt. My blue belt journey I felt like was forever.
Yeah. Well,
but I loved it.
I mean, there's so much to be learned at each belt. So the mission in Jiu Jitsu University is escaping.
Right.
Right. You know a little bit about Jiu Jitsu, but there's really kind of a weight that comes with every belt, right?
Like, it does. Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, you as a purple belt, you know quite a bit about Jiu Jitsu, but not only do you know about Jiu Jitsu, you're mentoring other lower belts beneath you,
right?
And bringing them with you. You're kind of like Mother Goose a little bit.
Yeah,
bringing us.
No, I do feel like in your belts you have a job, and I've talked about that before. Mm-hmm. Your white belts are your lifeline, like he's saying. I think you're exposed to a lot of things that you just don't know about, so you're learning. The big thing that you're learning about is your body. Oh, yeah. You're learning how like things hurt. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, you can fold a rib, you can hurt a knee, you can hurt an elbow, a shoulder, and now you're out. Yeah. And if you miss class as a white belt, the class is still moving. Yeah. And then it's like, oh my gosh, every time I walk in, I feel like I'm brand new if you cannot make a consistent schedule, right? Yeah. And we talk about that with you a lot, like because of where you're at in your belt, like we don't need to be to every class, but we have to be to a consistent class, right?
Well, I mean, it's like building any habit, right? And you have to show up. Yeah. If you stop showing up, then you instantly the habits bunk. Right. And something that is this physically demanding, and this physically challenging and mentally challenging, right? It's very easy to just walk away and say, it's too hard, or there's other life things that are going on that, you can take precedence.
Right. It really is learning your body, but also learning what it takes to understand this new language that you're learning. Because that's how like we talk about it. That's kind of how Professor talks about it, is that it's like learning another language with your body. Mm-hmm. And a white belt, you barely know how to say the big like 3-letter words, and you don't know very much about the language at that point.
It's a progressive elaboration, right?
It really is.
You learn by doing and you experience by doing, and like that's our learned behavior, right? Like everything we learn as human beings is learned. Right. You learn how to smile because you see your parents smiling. You learn how to have relationships with people because you're seeing it. And so the parallels are there.
They always are. And when we talk about like learning to, like when we talked about Lost, like our pseudo self and our solid self, you learn very quickly that you cannot fake anything in jiu-jitsu. You can't fake it, and you have to trust the professor or the instructor that's teaching you. Yeah. And a lot of times what he tells you is there is never a time in jiu-jitsu that he's going to tell you use brute strength. That's going to win everything. Right. He's always going to tell you to go slower, to be more methodical, to breathe. And that's how we approach life when we are lost in our pseudo self, right? Right. Yeah. We have to like change it.
Your children are screaming or they're upset and you're on wit's end and you're exploding at them, or you've got people in your office that are just getting under your skin, and you're like an ignition switch. Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like in anything in life. And so especially on the mats, you cannot tell somebody, I watched this move on YouTube. I'd like you to show it to me. Here, check out this video. A good professor is going to look at that and go, no, I know how to do that. But do you understand that the partner in there is doing half of the work and making him look that good? Right. And so it's never going to be something that you can learn unless you're there, which is like how life is. Mm-hmm. Unless you actually challenge yourself to change or to improve, nothing's ever going to be more realistic than life itself.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to put yourself in those uncomfortable positions, right? Outside of our comfort zone is where growth really happens.
For sure. And that's like a good practice for jiu-jitsu as a white belt, is to start every roll or every match with an idea or a goal that you want to work on that day.
I remember Professor encouraging that when I first came to the gym. He was like, come with a plan. Yeah. And I was just like, my plan was just to show up. Right. I was hoping you would tell me what to do.
Yeah. And that's what you want, right? Yeah. It's never going to happen like that. It's never going to be where they tell you. Maybe, I mean, there's probably some academies that are very structured, that have a very structured curriculum. Uh-huh. And I personally have never been to a place where it's structured curriculum. I've always been to, even when I was fighting MMA, it was you walked in and whatever the professor was showing that day or whatever the instructor was showing that day, that's what everybody learned.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether you were brand new or you were a black belt in that art form, they showed whatever move of the day. When we were coaching wrestling, we would always say, well, our brand new kids would just need to catch up with the kids that we're showing the technique to. And it did work, but there was no structured curriculum. Yeah, so when you fake anything, whether you're faking in your life or you fake to get a job,
right?
People have done that before.
The fake it to make it.
Fake it to make it. Do you hear that all the time?
All the time. It was like a theme for a long part of my life. Like fake it till you make it.
So when I first got certified as an air traffic controller, they told you just act like you know what you're doing. Act like you've been there before. Act like you know what you're doing, and you will be fine.
The plane's going down, and Danny's like, "Yep, everything's normal."
I know exactly what's going on. Yeah, giving him a vector.
Yeah, we've been there before.
Yeah. No, and that was a very common theme. So anytime you walk into an academy, don't pretend like you know what you're doing. No. Don't ever give that idea that you know what you're doing, because they may put you in a situation where you could get hurt very, very, very badly because they think that you are more than what you really are.
Right.
So always go in there with the best intentions of like, I'm not going to fake this. I'm going to tell you exactly what I do. And maybe it's, I've never done it before and I'm terrified. Maybe it's, I have some wrestling background, but I don't have any jiu-jitsu background.
Right.
And maybe it's that you have some grappling background and you don't want to tell a lie about that either, because it'll be very obvious if you know jiu-jitsu. You won't be able to speak a different language.
Right. Well, and I just faking it, I can't imagine. You may be able to protect yourself, right? But you're going to be on the defense the whole time. The whole time, right? Like right. I'm trying to think of like, how could I even fake it on the mats? Like, I just don't feel like I could.
Right.
I don't feel like I could.
Well, and that goes back to our original podcast, The Lost.
Right.
When you're faking something and how you actually feel inside when you're faking, when your pseudo self is taken over and you're like, oh man, I'm just going to continue to press this way because I've already told Tyler who I am.
Right.
Tyler believes that I'm this amazing jiu-jitsu person or amazing something, input whatever you want. And now I have to like continue on with that lie, continue on with that pseudo self. It's not good, especially on the mats.
No, man, you're just gonna get crushed. You're gonna get beat up. And
could you imagine if you got really hurt?
I mean, we did the landmark. There's that landmark case that just came out of San Diego. Like I believe like there's a lot of buzz around it, and I don't know that much about it. Like I mean, I've seen the video. The video is terrifying. Right. And I don't know all the circumstances, so I can't speak to it too intelligently. But like, that's the kind of scenario you can get yourself in.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I had I had some in-depth conversations with Mona and Mike about it because I think about it a lot, hurting people or somebody getting hurt. Like, let's say a person comes in and they say they've had some training. I'm really trusting them to be honest with me.
Right.
And let's say that I put them in a position where they're training with us and that person gets hurt, right? And now I have to solely think about what's best for that person and what's best for the academy, right?
Right.
And so I've read a lot about it. I've listened to a lot about it, and I can't speak too much into it because I don't know. I have a lot of opinion about it, and it's just an opinion. It really is just an opinion, and I would hate to hurt somebody or have somebody get hurt, not knowing the realistic of do they know how to defend themselves safely. And as a white belt, just so we're clear, your number one job is to stay healthy, to stay on the mats, because everybody needs you.
Yeah.
The academy needs you, Lifeline.
Right.
Your partners need you because they need to be able to practice their techniques on you.
Right.
And you need it because your body needs to learn how to develop, to learn jiu-jitsu further.
Right.
You know? And so just, I implore you, like, if you're out there listening and you're wanting to start your journey or you're in a little bit of your journey, talk honestly about where you're at. If we can approach this as a life skill, don't pretend that you are more than what you really are.
Right.
And if you're struggling, if you're in a scary place, ask questions. if I've had a couple friends in the last couple of weeks that have taken their own life, and I take that seriously. I get very sad thinking that person thought that was their only way out.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know much more we could have done because we don't know people's demons, but that's at the far spectrum of what Tyler and I are talking about with our podcast and with our friends, is that we just want men to stay healthy.
Absolutely.
And jiu-jitsu is a big part of our life. Mm-hmm. We want to encourage our friends to start jiu-jitsu and continue their jiu-jitsu journey. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, don't give up ever. And don't give up on yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is scary to think about asking for help.
It is.
Absolutely. Me walking into the gym was a cry for help. Right. I was in a very dark place. Right. Like I knew I was getting the input that, we are like, this is what I needed. I needed something to change. Right. Sure. There was some catalyst there. Right. And it very easily could have gone the other way for me. Right. It very easily could have gone to, to something very dark. Right. But there's nothing wrong with a little bit of humility. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Right. You don't need to always posture yourself as this alpha. Sure. I think the concept of an alpha is very flawed. Right. Like, I know, agreed. There are men that are better at shit than you. Always. Right? Yeah, agreed. And you're going to be better than others at other things. Right. And it doesn't, at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter. We attach a lot of emotion to it, but we are not our emotions. We're not our feelings. We are, a collection of experiences that builds us to the amazing human beings we are. And regardless of your story, you are amazing. Like I don't care who you are. Right. Right. You are, there is something amazing about your story, about what you've survived, about what you've overcome. Right. Right. That can inspire somebody else. Right. And so ask for help. You just do it.
And somebody sees you as amazing. Yeah. Somebody out there sees you as amazing. And anytime you don't get that feeling, just remember, like, somebody sees you as amazing. Somebody does. Right. And we want to make sure in our own, as we go forward with our podcast and how we're talking to people, that we care, like that we really do care. And Tyler and I will never turn down a phone call. Nope. We'll never turn down a DM. Right. We'll never turn down somebody that says, hey, I've listened to you. I've thought about this. I need help. Right. We're never going to go, okay, thank you.
I may tell you that I don't have the skills to help you, but you know what? I'm going to link arms with you and I'm going to figure out how to get the help you need. Yep. Right. Like if I'm not the person, there's people out there that are more skilled. Right. Right. There's phone numbers you can call if you are in a very desperate place. Right.
Yeah. And that's where going into our just looking and life for our own selves as a white belt. Right. Is always staying humble, staying ego friendly, and remembering that, like, if you don't know, it's okay if you don't know. Right. Somebody's going to either teach you, show you, or give you a path to know. Right. And that's how I feel about jiu-jitsu. No matter what in my journey with Professor and with the black belts in our academy and some of the upper belts that are there still, it didn't matter if I had a question. If they couldn't answer it, they would always go like, let's find the answer. We'll figure out the answer. And if they had like a solution, a lot of times they would have to make adjustments for my body. Yeah. And they could do that. They can be like, okay, well, the way this may work for me because I've got longer arms. Yeah. Well, I don't have long arms. I don't have long limbs at all. And they would make adjustments.
Jiu-jitsu is such a humility ego shift, right? Like in the world, we're all supposed to be posturing, but like, being able to ask, like if you walk into any gym, just completely humble, right? Completely like, I know nothing. No one's going to fault you. Right. They're actually going to probably applaud your ability to be that self-aware. Right. I think self-awareness is like one of the currencies of underrated currencies of our manhood or of us in general as a human species, right? Our ability to be self-aware. Right. Right. And allowing yourself to go into an academy to say, I just want to learn this because I know that there's something special about it. Right. And I don't care. I mean, jiu-jitsu, great. Maybe it's Muay Thai, maybe it's MMA, maybe it's karate, maybe it's whatever it is. You dedicate yourself to something. Boxing.
Sure.
Right? You're getting out of your comfort zone and you're staying out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Otherwise, we there's this old analogy of like the frog in a pot.
Right.
Right? You throw in a frog in a pot of hot water, he immediately jumps his ass out.
Right.
But you throw that frog in lukewarm water and you slowly turn up the heat on his ass, and you next thing you know, you're eating frog. I don't know if you eat those.
He has no idea.
But the concept is we have to get out of our comfort zone because we can't get comfortable, or else we get boiled.
Right.
And jiu-jitsu offers you that opportunity every time you touch the mat.
Right. It does. And when you get a group of men around each other, there's all these different personalities that men bring to the table.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe that that's a great thing about jiu-jitsu is that you get all these men from all these different walks of life that they would never meet or mingle. For the longest time in our academy, we had so many police officers in our academy. And you think about the personalities that we have in our academy, right?
Right.
Some of us may have never had a good experience with a police officer until we went to jiu-jitsu. And now him and I are training together. And what if I'm an upper level belt that's had a bad experience with police officers and I'm like, I'm about to tune this dude up, right? Yeah. And he goes, well, I'm never going back to jiu-jitsu again.
Right. Yeah.
And I think in this current stage that we're in this current environment that we are in the world, all police officers need some sort of training how to handle a person on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the ground.
Absolutely.
So that gives me a benefit when I'm talking to police officers of showing them this technique of how to control a person that's considerably bigger than me, Danny.
I still will walk past a police officer and kind of size him up and be like, I wonder if he trains jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know? And I know if he doesn't, I know that I'm going to give, I could give him
a run for his money.
A run for his money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's going to call the boys in the blue and he's going to swarm me. But like, it's like when you drive a fast car, you're like, can I get away?
Yeah.
Maybe I could get away. What would a road chase be like? Right?
Yeah.
Right. It's the same. It
is the same thing.
Same thing. But they do need to, they owe it to themselves.
Yeah.
They owe it to themselves to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then that's just one small sect of our society. And then you think about young boys, young men that are evolving quickly.
Yeah.
And that's where I think those young men could benefit from being around a group of men that know how to mingle with each other that are from different walks of life.
Yeah.
We don't challenge each other to a fight. We don't speak ignorantly towards each other, because once we smack hands, bump fists, you better be able to back up whatever you're saying.
Well, and I think that's the beauty. We may quip at each other. We may poke each other, but we know at some point the balance is going to be restored.
It is.
Right? Like I may tease a black belt, but I know, you know what I mean? Like I know that like ultimately the balance of power is going to be restored.
Right.
Right? Like I may be wittier than him, but he's definitely going to, choke me out 7 times in 3 minutes.
Yeah. And that's why, like, if you teach these young young kids early on as white belts, you teach them to have this white belt mentality, to never go in there with this idea that they know and always be willing to ask questions. Then we can start to see a difference in our kids' classes with the kids that come in.
Yeah.
You start to see a difference with them. And that's where I think that's the benefit.
Yeah.
That is the benefit. When you can see that they are now grasping that once they ask questions and they see the results themselves,
right,
then the sky's the limits for them.
And I think the problem is that we tend to dictate to our children.
Right.
And we tend to dictate to people and it comes from a place of ego.
Right.
Right. Where I tell you what to do.
Right.
Right. And when I, without context, tell somebody what to do, I'm instantly encoding that into the fear centers of their brains, the frontal lobes, like the lowest form of our ability to process information.
Right.
Right.
The whole idea is to remember that when you have this catalyst and these things that you bring together, how does it benefit? How does it benefit when you are dictating to your child, like I dictate, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it.
It never is zero. Zero.
But if you give them some instructions, some guidance, some options, some pathways to success, and you allow them to pick which path, and both of those paths are the ones that you're helping them with.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's okay to be disappointed too, right? Like to give them options and to be disappointed.
Man, how do you deal with that?
I don't know. I mean, I struggle with it every day. My son's 14 and I'm like, he's his own person. I try to give him a wide boundary,
right?
But at the same time, I'm always like, man, maybe he's spending too much time on his phone, or maybe he's on his iPad, or what are all these? Why isn't his room clean?
Right.
So I'm learning every day.
Right.
I have to approach my relationship with my son the same way I approach jiu-jitsu, and the fact that like it's kind of a mental game at this point.
Right. Do you give him leeway to find his path from the questions that he comes up with?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I pushed him for a long time to pursue lacrosse, but I felt like that was pushing him to my dream, my goal. Right. And I realized that there was a very kind of a narcissistic relationship there that, I had to correct. I had to back off.
Right.
I couldn't live vicariously through him.
Yeah. And he's very athletic.
He's talented. No matter whatever sport he picks up. Yeah. And I'm super proud of him. As of lately, his school is within walking distance to the gym. He's been in the gym lifting weights every day for the last month.
Good for him.
So and I mean I'm not a gym rat. Like I can barely make it to jiu-jitsu 3 times a week, but he's been there every day. And so, that's his thing, and I support it, and I'll continue to
guide him and help him out.
Yeah, whatever he needs, right?
And jiu-jitsu gives you that balance of being able to see that the way that you do things might be slightly different than the way that I do things. And then just from limitations comes up with the fact that there's just things that I cannot do.
Right.
And also vice versa, size and stature, there's just things that I can do that just there's nothing that you can do.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that gives us a chance to be successful fathers for right now, be successful fathers, to be successful students, and to be successful in our other avenues of our life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, we wouldn't have each other. Right? But if it wasn't for the fact that our professor has dedicated his life to jiu-jitsu and then has dedicated his time to giving back to Park City, I know he does a lot of things outside in the community with Park City.
Yeah.
We have outreach. He has an outreach program. He has some other avenues. He does women's self-defense. He does things on the outside that brings to the academy.
Yeah.
But he's been up there for 12 years.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a lengthy time all of those jiu-jitsu guys out there know that a jiu-jitsu instructor giving 12 years of his time to a city is a very, very, very strong hold for our academy.
Yeah.
And I think that the dedication that we find, we get to our academy. So what do you want from an academy?
Yeah,
what are you looking for from an academy, Tyler?
That's a great question. Like I didn't really know. I had to approach this very methodically, and I had to ask a lot of input from people that, practiced longer than I did. I had the great benefit of having a coworker whom I'm really good friends with that was way into jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And he did a quick search for me and he said, here's the place to go. But I did check out 4 or 5 different academies. There's a couple places that do some no-gi here in Heber, and then there's Gracie Baja in Park City, and then I think there's another place in the...
There was, yeah. I don't think there anymore.
I mean, you can Google search for it, right? But like at the end of the day, I was looking at like what was available to me at Park City. Granted, it did take me 3 times to get in, but like the website gave me a good enough impression of what to expect there, right? Like the grooming habits and the,
Right.
you know, how to present myself, the class schedule, like what was actually available for me to take. And so, and that, of course, you know, knowing somebody who knew jiu-jitsu, it was like, you know, this guy's Pedro Sauer. This is, you know, this is where I would go.
Right. And did you have any expectations coming into the class of, did you know what gi and no gi was?
I had no idea that there was a difference. No, none.
Right.
None. I assumed everything was in some sort of uniform like karate.
Right. Yeah. Which is the gi. So for those of us that have never went to an academy, seen an academy, know what's going on, how it traditionally starts, a traditional style is the gi.
Yeah.
That's the kimono with the belt.
Yep.
That's the traditional style. Not that no gi isn't traditional or that you don't have traditional aspects of that. It's just that when you hear like the original Gracie's talk, their no gi practices were just t-shirts and shorts just because they forgot their gis or something weird like that, you know? And so coming into it, what did the gi make you nervous?
Not so much, other than I have pretty burly amount of chest hair, right? And I was worried about my nipples chafing off, like in that episode of The Office where they do the marathon.
Yeah.
But it didn't. Like, one, I came in with just an expectation of like, I need to do something. I need to do something to feel safe. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most renowned martial arts. I mean, if you turn on just about any popular real podcast out there, you know, they're talking about jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu is, I think, kind of hitting its stride right now.
I believe so as well.
You know, and it has such a storied history.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for the longest time, I thought, no, maybe I'd go learn capoeira because I've always wanted to learn to dance, but like also another Brazilian art. Maybe I just need to move to Brazil.
Maybe.
I might just need to move to Brazil. I just, at the end of the day, I've watched enough UFC. Like it just, you know, I just knew the jiu-jitsu was like, it was legit.
Right.
There was something legit about it that I was attracted to.
And I believe that's part of what a lot of our listeners will feel.
Yeah.
They'll feel that same pull because of, luckily we have the UFC.
Yeah.
Luckily we have some personalities, and probably across your Instagram or your Facebook or your TikTok or your Snapchat feed. I don't know if those actually have feeds. I know Instagram does, but I don't have any of the other stuff.
Social media.
You'll see some of these strong personalities, and you'll be like, oh, I want to emulate that person, like we talked about in episode 1, emulating a personality, emulating a person that you're like, oh, I really kind of like that guy, right? Mm-hmm. Or my big push right now is to bring all my wrestlers, all the guys that wrestled. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, wrestling has a shelf life. Wrestling has this. I can't continue to wrestle like I wanted to. Just a quick backstory. I went to Spokane last weekend for women's nationals. Amazing the way that the women are catching up with the men. Their level of their skill, amazing. Shout out to women's wrestling. Grow it. I appreciate it. I love it. Yeah. I believe the same thing about jiu-jitsu. Keep growing it. Keep bringing in those people that are wrestling and keep coming to jiu-jitsu.
You know what I find, and maybe we'll get some female jiu-jitsu players out there, but you know what I find? Like there's this big argument of transgender in sports right now. Like it's, to me, it feels like a moot point in jiu-jitsu. Right. You take size and weight out of it. I'm willing to bet that if you put, you know, a 145 black belt female and a 145 black belt male on the mats, that you would arguably have like a fairly fair match. What do you think?
I actually don't know. I don't know. I do think that there's a difference in skill with just the way that we're built. Yeah. But I do believe that I've trained with some women that literally I know could destroy me and do destroy me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I really do think you could take gender out of it if you were to put same weight class, same, you know, belt level, same amount of training, right? You got, you know, I think it'd be an interesting social experiment.
Sure. I don't know. I don't know enough about that, and I don't know if I have a vested interest in that, honestly. But when you go to an academy and the biggest thing that you're going to notice is the mats.
Yeah.
How the mats look.
The
smell, the feel. Is there a buzz? There's an energy.
Yeah.
When you go to our academy, both academies, Park City and Lehigh, both of them are buzzing. When everybody starts to show up, it's like it's another energy level that you're like, bzzz, and then everybody starts to show up and it's like, bzzz, and it's like a little honeycomb of bees, and everybody's ready to go, and everybody's touching each other, and they want to like start grabbing.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. I think that's a huge thing. For me personally, I also want to see that the black belts and the upper belts they may show up late, like the funny joke of the purple belts don't have to show up for warm up, but are they on the mats? You know, are they there?
Yeah.
You know, and as a white belt walking into academy, did you even know anything like that? Would that have even registered in your head?
I mean, like the kind of sport specific tropes, no. Like I've kind of fallen into it. I had no expectation. Like no.
Yeah, I think that's that's good for us, for our listeners.
Yeah.
Make sure that's buzzing. Make sure you feel that energy. Make sure you feel like, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to be a part of this.
It didn't take. I think it was my first Sunday. To be honest, my first Sunday was when I was like, I need to be here. Like I was excited to be there. Like y'all passed out beer at the end, and I was like, this is my kind of sacrament, right? Like I was exhausted, drenched in sweat, like could hardly move, like
yeah.
And then, you know, Danny came around with the Pacifico and handed everyone one, and it was like the sweetest nectar of
what we want.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because we've
earned.
We've already talked about this. There's nothing like a cold beer after open mat on Sunday,
and you earn it. You have to earn it, right? Like, you know, you have to earn it. So
you may walk in and you may see the professor. You may talk to the professor. He's probably going to give you some advice, some good knowledge leading up to your first class. And then what I would say is to remember to take care of yourself, which means don't expect to roll quickly. Mm-mm. Take the time to do the class. Take the time to let your body warm up to jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. The last thing you want to do is separate a rib, first class, first open mat, when you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And next thing you know, you're hurt, and now you're off the mat for a couple weeks. Yeah. That's the last thing we would need. So take your time, warm up.
Right.
Did you roll right away?
I think I went to about a week's worth of training before I started open mat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you?
I stayed and watched several open mats.
Right.
Like I stayed my first few classes and watched just so I could be aware. But like, yeah, I mean, I kind of, I wasn't in any hurry. Like I knew I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
I kind of told myself I wasn't going anywhere. Like, the only place I'm going is here.
Yeah, good. And then take your time with understanding the lingo.
Yeah.
The language.
Yeah.
The etiquette. Be gentle with yourself on that stuff.
Sure.
Be so gentle. The fact that you are going to make so many mistakes the first however many years you're doing it, you're going to make so many mistakes. Even as a black belt, I'm sure you're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
You're going to have moments where you're maybe say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, act the wrong way. But remember that to be gentle with yourself in this art, because it really is time consuming, mentally consuming. And we want to understand that it's going to be ever evolving and it's always going to be growing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you stay mentally focused as a 4-stripe white belt to come to class?
To me, to stay mentally focused, well, one, having an accountability buddy, without a doubt. Right. Personally, I just need that accountability. I need somebody to call me out.
Right.
I need it. It was part of what I was looking for in my life. Two, just truly wanting to throw myself into something where I could be completely humble.
Right.
Where I knew nothing. Right. I'd coached lacrosse, and I'd kind of put on this lacrosse persona that I was X, Y, and Z. I worked, and I kind of had this work persona that I was X, Y, and Z. But like, I felt like I could walk into the Jiu Jitsu academy, and I didn't have to be anything.
Man, such a good feeling.
Right? Like, I didn't have to be anything but just somebody who didn't know nothing.
I love that.
Right? All I know is that I don't know nothing, and that's fine.
And so that means always remembering to stay a student.
Yeah.
To be a student. To never think that you're an instructor. To never think that you're actually teaching. Go in there with the idea that you're just going to be a student and you're just going to learn.
Yeah.
If it doesn't come quickly, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's going to get there, you know? And so wrapping that part up, remember also find an academy, in my opinion, find an academy that teaches you self-defense, that teaches you to defend yourself, not in the academy sport jiu-jitsu with mats that are soft, but out in the streets. I always like to tease the mean streets of Park City and the mean streets of Heber. If you're in Utah, you'll get the joke about that. But remember, like the reason why you're learning something, the reason why you're dedicated to that is so that when you're in a very stressful situation, you know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And one of the best way, walk away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember there was like a few weeks ago, there was some young lady that was attacked in a gym, I think down in Texas.
I remember seeing that video.
I think I sent it to you. Right? Dude runs up behind her, grabs her around the shoulders, around the arms, behind the back. And like, I was just like, I know exactly what I would do in this situation. Does my daughter?
Yeah.
And I sent it to her and I said, we need to do the women's self-defense class.
Yeah.
And I think too, you know, from a somatic, like personal experience, like I was looking for a way to feel safe with inside of my own body.
Right.
There's a fabulous book about Jiu Jitsu and trauma. Those people who have survived, whether it be physical abuse or sexual abuse from some sort of predator. And there is some satisfaction and some science behind training a martial arts like Jiu Jitsu. While it can be triggering to put yourself back in those situations, there is some healing that is actually can happen because you're learning to defend yourself from those situations. So you can kind of learn to forgive yourself to say, oh, I didn't have this tool previously and now I do. And so moving forward, like there's a lot of, I think it's transforming trauma through jiu-jitsu or something like that. We'll link it in our website and on our social post this few weeks, but incredible book. If you've been in those type of situations,
that's heavy.
Yeah.
It's heavy. It's heavy because it probably learning how to breathe.
Yeah.
Learning how to focus your energy.
You're right.
To a certain point. I bet that's huge for people learning to deal with that trauma, to get recentered and regrounded. They probably have to go through a bunch of things to learn that. And when you're getting crushed, and you're getting your ass handed to you, right? That can't even equate a small portion to having some actual trauma.
Yeah.
To actual trauma that you need to learn how to ground yourself so we don't lose you.
Yeah.
So we don't lose you to your thoughts and to your evil demons that tell you, and all those evil voices. We need to learn how to deal with one in one instance and then really put some effort into dealing with the other in the other instance. Yeah. You know, I like that. I really like that. It's an interesting way to look at it.
It is. And I know that my experience was light, but I shared this on the last episode, like just not feeling safe in my body. Like,
yeah, you said that.
Like putting myself in those situations while I have never been one, you know, in that type of situation. Like there was definitely for me a very somatic, like I know that there's a secret move that I can use to get out of this at any point. Right. But I'm going to challenge myself to push myself to the limit. Right. Right. That doesn't mean I'm not tapping when I've got, you know, professor, you know, yanking on my arm or putting me in a difficult situation. It's learning to recognize and not disassociate and to be present. Right. And to be connected with my body and to listen to the messages that, you know, this beautiful thing is telling me what to do. Right.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last little part of, like, when you're looking for an academy during open mat, at our ages, we really want to know that our partners are going to keep us safe. Yeah. That our partners are going to, like, take care of us. Yes, they are going to practice their moves, and they're going to, if you give them energy that they respond with the same energy, then remember that it's probably your energy that's dictating that energy. Yeah. if you go in there and dudes are just kicking the crap out of you and you're like, I don't even know what I did, maybe wait a little bit longer for open mat.
Right.
Wait for your body and your mind to catch up.
Right.
Or maybe come to Park City Jiu Jitsu, Park City or Lehigh, and see exactly like the energy should always be good.
Yeah.
And if it's negative, it's probably because something's in there throwing off the energy.
Absolutely.
You know, and if it's constantly like that, if it's constantly, I don't feel safe in the academy and, you know, I don't feel like I'm going to keep going back, time to change.
Right.
Time to move on. Time to find a different place, and that's okay. Not every academy is for each person.
And not every person can handle the weight of each belt, right?
Agreed.
Right? Like we haven't even talked about the weight of each belt.
Yeah.
You know, we've got
maybe we'll touch on that like on the next time.
Yeah,
we'll talk about like how to respond when you start getting your stripes,
right?
Your promotions, each of those things. Because when you're in your journey, you're going to come to class enough that you get your first stripe.
Yeah.
You're going to come to enough classes that you're going to get your first belt. And how you respond to those is just as important as walking in the door the first day. Mm-hmm. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's your progression, right?
Yeah.
You can choose to let it go to your head, or you can choose to remain humble and keep trying.
Yeah. And that's, as we wrap up and as we finish up this episode, which has been great.
Dude.
Remember, like, don't quit.
Don't quit.
Don't quit. Don't quit. Don't quit learning. Don't quit learning how to be a better husband. Don't quit learning how to be a better father. My wife and I had this conversation today. She was, she had kind of gone into a little cocoon. I know she doesn't want me telling all of her stories, but she's not going to mind this. She had gone into a little cocoon and she was self-protecting and self making sure that herself wasn't getting hurt.
Yeah.
And I kept reminding her, like, hey, call your coach, call your friend, reach out. And it's just a gentle reminder, like, that you always need help. But when you start to go inside those cocoons and you start to like protect yourself from what's going on to the outside, it's a very, very, very big indicator that something needs to change.
Absolutely.
Something needs to change.
Absolutely.
And Tyler and I know that about ourselves. We know that about each other. We know that about our significant other, our kids. But we also know it when we see somebody in the academy that's struggling.
Yeah.
And you're like, something needs to change. And we need to be able to say to our friends and our family members, ask for help.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Do we want to shout out Preston?
We do.
We want to shout out Preston.
Just remember that you're always going to meet these interesting personalities. And we talked about Preston last time. Preston is a big part of each of Professor's Academies. Everybody at both locations knows Preston.
Yes.
And just remember that that's the thing that you want. You want to have somebody that you're like, each of us know that person that's going to reach out to you.
Yes.
And Preston called us and he was giving us some cool information about our academy and how him and his family all listened to our academy. I mean, to our jiu-jitsu podcast.
Yeah.
And last time he was like, man, such a great thing that he wanted to share with us. He wanted to share, and he said that he had just gotten promoted to his brown belt, right? And so he didn't know if he felt that he was ready for it. He didn't feel like he was ready for it.
So crazy.
Yeah. And you're like, man, he's a monster.
Right? Well, no, I had so much pride. I was like, dude, I know that guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Seeing a brown belt, like we don't have very many of them.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he called me and he was saying that he was telling me about how great, like, that his family had listened to the podcast and that he had thought, I wasn't sure that I was ready for that brown belt. And then all he said was, then I remembered, Professor promoted me to that brown belt. It's okay if, like, I don't feel comfortable in that brown belt. He feels comfortable promoting me to that brown belt. And all he has to do is to continue to come, and he'll grow into that brown belt.
Absolutely.
And I thought, what a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
What a cool way to look at it.
Right?
You may not be ready for things. You may not be ready to be a dad.
No.
You may not demand that they hand you that baby and you're like,
oh shit.
But guess what? you're going to grow into it. Mm-hmm. You're going to grow into it. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. You may have to quit things that are just bad for you.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
Just
what are you willing to sacrifice?
What are you willing to sacrifice
to become the best version of yourself?
So true. Yeah.
What are you willing to sacrifice to become?
I started to kind of ramble a little bit because I was thinking about Preston, and my words started to blend together because I can see his face and think about when he was telling me that, and I thought, man, you really need that you really need those guys.
Yeah.
That you attach yourself to, that when he gets promoted, you get promoted.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great thing in our academy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was interesting too that at that ceremony, like Aaron, the blue belt he was mentoring, that he was one of the first guys I met who had just started. I think he was a month ahead of me in his journey, and now he's a blue belt, and now Preston's a brown belt. And it's like you have excitement and pride for these people that you get to share the mat with, and you build a community.
You do.
And as you talked about it, Professor is not only has he built a community amongst his gym rats, but he's expanded that community into the larger community of Park City, the larger community of Heber, and he definitely influences the community we're trying to build here with the Lost Boy Scouts, with the podcast, with our personal coaching, with each and every thing that we do. He's infused, his philosophy and his messages in that, and I think that is our call as men is to pass down the good, to lift each other up. Right? Like it's easy, it's cheap to beat each other down. It's very difficult to build each other up.
It is. Yeah. No, you're right. And I think one of the funny things that Professor Elwood one time told me, he said, eventually you will start sounding like your professor. and I thought that was like, what? Maybe he's like talking about like, he talks like Master Sour sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's not what it is. It's that you regurgitate the good things that they tell you. And I tell those, so I hear myself sometimes and I'm like, I sound just like Professor. And I get so excited thinking about that. And that's what I think about when you're looking for something, that's what you want. You want that community. You want that common unity that will bring people together, that will make you excited.
Yeah.
Right.
And it circles, right? Like it's constantly in motion. You'll find it at more than one place. As we wrap up this episode, Danny, you agree with us, don't disagree with us. Like where can we find, and connect with more?
First things, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, compassionate_gentleman. And I train at Park City Jiu Jitsu. I'm always there. If you don't see me there, you can ask if I train there, and most people know Danny. How about you?
Absolutely. Park City Jiu Jitsu, we're there. Disagree with what we have to say, and let's work it out on the mats. Agree with what we have to say, and come find out for yourself. Always Lost Boy Scouts website, lostboyscouts.com. We're on Facebook finally, Instagram, Twitter. Or just hit us up at hello@Lost Boy Scouts. We want to hear from you.
We do.
If you're struggling, if you need something, if you have feedback, if you have questions, we want to hear from you. We want to hear from our audience. Leave a comment. Find us on social media. We're about connecting with like-minded or unlike-minded individuals. I have no problem meeting you somewhere and giving you the business.
Yeah, for sure. Don't forget, Sunday, open mats, 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.